Do not accept this mixed-race child, maybe out of wedlock, maybe they are single mother, so their country are more conservative.
Unable to return home, Anna tried to find an employer who would give her time to take care of her young child.
Cannot find. Very difficult to find this employer.
With no new employer on the horizon, Anna soon overstayed her visa.
To be a overstayer in Hong Kong, this means they have no sustainable future almost, because they cannot get a job to support themselves, their unborn baby or their family. They do not want to overstay their visa, but it seems they have no choice.
Since the majority of foreign domestic workers are of childbearing age, it should come as no surprise that some will become mothers while working in the city. So what can be done to guard against the vulnerability pregnancy leads to for these women? Pathfinders, an organisation that assists pregnant foreign domestic helpers, has urged the government to explicitly state in the standard employment contract for these workers their entitlement to maternity leave.
The other thing we need is some very clear guidance from a consortium of government departments setting out what a happy, healthy, well-managed pregnancy and maternity leave looks like in terms of practical steps to follow for both the employer and the employee. Because the result of a lack of clear policy is that children are being born in Hong Kong in the most abject poverty, in extremis, and without support and help, and that's just not acceptable.
In a written response to TVB, the Labour Department says the government has been informing foreign domestic helpers and employers of their rights and obligations regarding maternity protection through various measures. Therefore, it does not see a strong need to specifically set out in the standard employment contract for foreign domestic helpers that they're entitled to maternity leave and protection. The workers should discuss with their employers early regarding their maternity leave arrangements, the department also wrote. But it stopped short of saying what the appropriate arrangements should be. Owen Fung, TVB News.
A 15-year-old girl has fallen to her death from a home in Repulse Bay. Police found the girl had never gone to school and arrested her parents for suspected child neglect or abuse. The teenager was found dead at around 1 a.m. by a security guard at a home on Repulse Bay Road. Police don't believe her death was suspicious, but they found out that the girl's 53-year-old mother, who's from the Philippines, has overstayed her visa for 20 years. Police detained the mother and the 58-year-old British father. The father was later released on bail. It's believed the victim and her younger sister do not have ID cards and that they've never attended school.
Turning overseas again, the United Nations Security Council is scrambling to find ways to free thousands of Palestinian refugees and Syrian civilians trapped in a camp seized by Islamic State militants. Sonia Artero reports.
Non-stop battles between Islamic State fighters and rival insurgents have reduced the Yarmouk refugee camp to ruins. The fate of 18,000 Palestinians, many of them children, hangs in the balance after Islamic State militants seized control from insurgents. The Syrian army rescued these refugees amid a scene of horror as Islamic State began invading their camp. This youngster says militants started beheading the men who stayed behind, but kidnapped the youth to use them as fighters. This is why the Palestinian UN ambassador pleaded with the Security Council for help.
We hope that the Security Council will adopt a position to secure a safety passage through UN agencies.
The UN Security Council president vowed to do just that.
The members called for the protection of civilians in the camp, for ensuring humanitarian access to the area, including by providing life-saving assistance, and ensure safe passage and evacuation of the civilians.
Washington urged all parties to halt the fighting to allow evacuations.
We are calling on all parties of the conflict to allow regular, uninterrupted humanitarian access to the population in Yarmouk.
There was also a plea for those with influence over warring parties to intervene.
Messages simply have to be passed to all of the parties that people who are detained should be treated well, that civilians, particularly women and children, should be respected.
This is the same reason dozens of Palestinians protested outside the UN headquarters in Gaza yesterday. They're adamant the UN has a duty to secure the safe exit of women and children. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
Jurors are set to begin deliberations in the trial of Boston Marathon bombing suspect Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. In closing arguments yesterday, a prosecutor told the court the bombing was a cold, calculated terrorist act that was intentional and bloodthirsty. The twin bombings near the finish line of the marathon almost 2 years ago killed 3 people and wounded more than 260. The prosecutor said the attack was aimed at spreading terror and punishing the U.S. for its wars in Muslim countries. But a lawyer for the ethnic Chechen said her client took part in the attack because of the influence of his older brother, Tamerlan, who died 4 days after the attacks. Next, a story about bad journalism in the U.S. A University of Virginia fraternity says it plans to sue Rolling Stone magazine over a now discredited story about a student known as Jackie, claiming she was gang raped at Pi Kappa Psi in 2012. Academics at Columbia Journalism School concluded that the magazine had failed to verify the article properly.
There were problems of methodology. There were problems of newsroom standards and procedures. Those were the key issues of our report. We don't believe that in this case Jackie was to blame.
We are particularly focused in the report on the idea that it would be a really unfortunate outcome if journalists backed away from doing this kind of reporting as a result of this highly visible failure, because this is important work and it's hard work. That's not to make an excuse for this failure.
All right, time for sports with Tony.
That's right, and one of China's most famous sports stars is calling it a day. We'll talk all about it. Yes, China's Olympic gold medal winning hurdler Liu Xiang, he announced his retirement today, ending a run in the sport which was ultimately frustrated by successive injuries late in his career. Liu became an icon in China after he won the country's first Olympic men's track and field gold medal in the 110 meters hurdles at the Athens Games in 2004. In addition to his Olympic success, Liu was also world champion and won numerous Asian titles. He also held the world record at one point with a time of 12.88 seconds. But injuries and the burden of expectation began to wear him down, forcing him out of the defense of his Olympic title in Beijing in 2008. Let's move on to football now, and Manchester City's defence of their Premiership title suffered another blow as the Sky Blues lost on the road to Crystal Palace. For Palace, the victory represents a remarkable turnaround in fortunes which has rescued their season.